Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi just concluded his visit to UAE. This is his fifth visit to the country since taking over in 2014 and shows the high level momentum between the two countries. With me is the Indian ambassador to UAE, Sanjay Sudhir. Sir, welcome to WION. And my first question to you is, one of the key outcomes of the visit has been the announcement on trading in national currencies. How does this arrangement works?
Siddhant, thank you very much for having me on your show. I think the rupee dirham trading arrangement is something which is extremely significant. It actually marks a paradigm shift on how we make our trade settlements. You'll recall that when India and the UAE signed CEPA last year in February, that was the first CEPA ever for the UAE, and for India, it was the first CEPA which we had with any country in this part of the world. Likewise, this kind of a trade settlement arrangement is also the first time we are doing it with any country in the world, actually. And same for the UAE. Actually, equally significant is the MOU on interlinking payments and messaging systems. So if you recall, two very, very concrete economic or say fintech MOUs were signed. And the second one, I think, was equally significant because that talks about the availability of the RuPay card, I mean, the utility of the RuPay card in this country. It also talks about interlinking our UPI and the instant payment system of the UAE, and also our instant messaging system, which has recently been developed by RBI.
Mhm. Sir, if you can perhaps simplify how first the trading arrangement in national currencies help the common man of the two countries, essentially the traders, how will it increase the trade between the two countries, and also the interlinking of the payment mechanism. So how does it benefits me if I go to UAE?
Siddhant, actually, the INR AED mechanism takes CEPA a step further. CEPA gave tariff preference. So from our perspective, it gave 5% tariff preference to all the items covered under CEPA. Now, the INR AED mechanism will further reduce transaction costs and also transaction time. It will give an added benefit to our exporters and importers. And the way it works is very simple. The mechanism will use of existing banking systems in the two countries. All the exporters and importers now have a choice to pay for their transactions in either the UAE dirham or Indian rupees based on their commercial judgment or mutual agreement. This will be converted by financial intermediaries, in today's context, the banks in the two countries, into either rupee or dirham directly without having the need to use third country currencies. Two kinds of accounts will facilitate this. One is the SNRR account, which is the special non-resident rupee account, and second is the Vostro account. Exchange rates, of course, will be determined by the market. And the beauty of this mechanism is that the mechanism actually covers all current account transactions, including all transactions like oil, and also permissible capital account transactions. The money which accrues out of this could also be used for investing in equities, government securities, private securities. So it gives a wide gamut of usage also. And it is so simple to operate, Siddhant, that the day it was signed, day before yesterday, the same day a major gold transaction also happened. An exporter in the UAE actually exported gold to Yes Bank and Federal Bank worth 12.84 crore rupees. And as you know, gold and gems and jewelry are the second largest traded item between us. It constitutes about 20% of our entire trade portfolio.
So also when it comes to interlinking of the payment mechanism, if you can help us understand how it benefits the people of two countries, or perhaps the Indians in UAE, the large number of Indians we all know in UAE.
Actually, the second MOU is more of an enabling MOU to work further on developing the technical linkages. But the way it will help will be immense because under the RuPay tag, what will happen is that anybody traveling from India with a RuPay card, an international RuPay card or a domestic RuPay card, will be able to use his or her credit card. or anybody here. And so, as you know, there are 3.5 million Indians living in the UAE, which is the largest population of Indian nationals in any country in the world. If they have RuPay cards from India, then they can also very easily make the transaction. And as far as UPI is concerned, once the UPI gets linked to the instant payment platform of the UAE, the ease with which we are all able to pay in India, for example, using Bheem app or Google Pay or Paytm and the likes using UPI platform, it will be the same seamless ease with which our tourists and the Indian community will be able to make payments. So in a way, it enhances the ease of living in this country, I would say.
Ease of living to ease of trading. Sir, the trading in national currencies, are we also looking at usage of dirham to pay to other West Asian countries or perhaps to Russia, given that dirham is something that is being used by other countries as well?
Well, as I just mentioned, India and the UAE have been pioneers, whether it is SEPA or the rupee dirham payment mechanism. And that has its obvious advantages, which I just listed out. Now, the thing is that a template is already in place. It is for other countries to decide if they want to go in for a similar arrangement or not. It's entirely their call. But India, by the virtue of setting up this mechanism, has already conveyed its willingness to go in for more such deals.
So the other big announcement was the establishment of IIT campus in UAE. We also have heard and of course seen that how India is establishing IIT in Tanzania. Now we have seen this announcement on IIT in West Asia. So how does it increases the educational linkages between India and UAE? And what's the purpose exactly of establishing an IIT in UAE?
You know, our relations are so multidimensional. Education is one sub part of it. UAE was actually the first country with which we started discussions on setting up a campus of the IIT last year. And on our part, it was the IIT Delhi which took the lead. So by setting up a campus of IITD here, we will further increase our educational ties, and it will be another feather in the cap of India-UAE relationship. The offshore IIT campus will also enhance India's educational reputation globally, as well as that of IIT Delhi, and allow it to expand its international footprint. You know it very well that IIT is something which is a global brand, but so far a very national kind of presence. With this setting up of a campus of IIT Delhi in Abu Dhabi, the brand will actually be going out and establishing itself in another country. This is also likely to improve IIT Delhi's global rankings due to the presence of international students, international research collaborations, and so many other things. Actually, discussions are already on with the big entities like ADNOC on how we can do some research in, say, the sustainability field, in the R&D sphere of oil and gas, renewables, and other things. So IIT Delhi's presence here, being at the cutting edge of R&D, will actually also synergize other similar efforts which are already happening in Abu Dhabi, and there are scores of them. While the student body will not be restricted to Indians, it would serve the needs of the larger Indian community in the UAE and this part of the world. And I think that will be a great boon for the Indian diaspora in this part of the world.
So India and UAE have other pillars of relationship as well: food security, connectivity, and of course I2U2. Perhaps if you can brief us about what's the current status. First, of course, I2U2, and what are the other domains, including connectivity, where there are perhaps work going on to increase, of course, more substance?
The relationship, as I said, is such a multi-dimensional relationship. People-to-people contact is so strong. Therefore, connectivity is strong. And today, the air frequencies between India and the UAE is perhaps the largest which India has with any other country in the world. If you recall last year in February, when Prime Minister Modi and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed had a virtual conference and witnessed the signing of SEPA, another very key document which was signed, which was actually unveiled, was the vision statement. And the vision statement actually lays out the roadmap for our relationship in different areas, whether it's health, education, fintech, space, defense, food security, and so many other areas. So there's work happening in all these areas. As far as I2U2 is concerned, you'll recall that the first I2U2 Leaders Summit was held virtually in July last year. Two projects were announced at that time involving UAE investment of about $2 billion in setting up food parks. Another was about hybrid energy park. After that, the first business conclave of I2U2 countries was also held in Abu Dhabi in February this year. So there's a lot happening in that area. And there's active engagement already taking place between ADQ of the UAE and also Gujarat government in setting up of food parks.
So you mentioned about space. If I may ask on space, because we're still making headlines here when it comes to Chandrayaan, and that's a very important moment for India's space domain. So what are we looking when it comes to UAE? Because UAE also has a very advanced space program.
Oh, yes, and we have a history too, because the first microsatellite of the UAE was actually launched by India. ISRO had the credit to do that. And UAE has made significant progress in space research. Today, as we speak, one of their astronauts is on a 6-month-long voyage in space, and that's a very creditable thing. In fact, you might have heard that on the International Day of Yoga, one of the messages he sent out from space was about yoga. And he tweeted from there asking people that this is my, he was sitting in a meditative posture. So he asked people everywhere that this is my favorite asana. Which one is yours?
So from space to yoga, yoga has been very popular as well in UAE, and we saw those visuals coming this year and last year as well, famous locations where yoga happened. So if you can perhaps give us an overview as to how popular yoga is in UAE.
There's huge and growing interest in yoga, and we can see that for ourselves. For instance, when we celebrated the International Yoga Day on 21st June this year, the theme which we had adopted was Ocean Connect Initiative. Now, under that, INS Brahmaputra called on Port Rashid in Dubai. And Port Rashid is a very important port because that port has really stood for connectivity between India and the UAE, between Indians and Emiratis. It was the first hub for trade and people-to-people contact. And therefore, it was most befitting that we did our flagship IDY celebration this year at Port Rashid. We did another one exclusively for diplomats and for the international community under the iconic dome of Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi, and yet a third one in Abu Dhabi, which was actually, we are so grateful to His Highness Sheikh Nahyan, Minister of Tolerance and Coexistence, for agreeing to be the chief guest this year, as he always graciously does every year. That was again a very big event. So yoga is actually, people are getting to realize more and more that this ancient Indian treasure, how useful and how beneficial it is for their lives.
So clearly, sir, UAE and India have a strong relationship in almost every domain, from defense to space to trading in national currencies, and of course yoga as well. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and sir, we will be in touch with you. Thank you so much, sir, for joining from UAE, and thank you so much essentially in terms of briefing us as to what were the key outcomes of PM Modi's visit to UAE.
Thank you very much, Siddhant, for having me on your show.